now. And y'all know I have a passion in this area, and Yahweh is just, all I can say is he's phenomenal. I can say this to you, and I believe that you will believe me. But it's not necessary that everyone believe me. All I ask is that you hear me. That's all I ask. I'm not offended in any way, shape, or form for any person that does not quite believe everything I believe. I'm only merely a messenger to bring forth a message. And so what I read in the scriptures, I believe because I see them. As I read them, I hear his words. And I hear him speaking to me. I take it personally. I hear him speaking to me when I read it. And so as I share with you today, 7 trumpets, 7 seals, 7 bowls, the end time events. And again, you've heard me speak on this same topic. This is something that I've already done, just modified it a little bit and added to as the time progressed. So this is kind of a break into what I've been doing, looking at the priesthood. I felt it necessary because of the holy days that we are in and the time that we are in, so that we can take a look at what is happening, what is going on. And so I want to say right here in the front as well, I spoke on the 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls, and what I added was the 7 seals. And no way, shape, form, or fashion am I doing justice to it, but I see a necessity to bring it in. The 7 seals is very deep by itself. Matter of fact, it brings more clarity. As I was reading through the 7 seals, preparing myself, I could see the priesthood in this. 2 different areas of the priesthood. I can see the eternal priest and the forever priest. And we'll kind of define as we move along. I won't get into it heavy because I've been teaching on the priesthood for quite a few weeks now. But I want you to keep that in mind as I move through, especially when I speak concerning the seals. It is very heavy there. And that would be coming from Revelation chapter 6 that tells us about the seals, and also those who have been sealed, all the way to chapter 8. So I just kind of did bookends, the first part and the last part. That's 3 chapters by itself. I couldn't get it all into what I was trying to do for today. Perhaps I'll have to try to come back with just the seals. I don't know, as Yahweh lead me. But I think I'll give you enough of it so that you can see that there's something that is magnificent that is taking place. So as we move through, we'll look at even just the first part as we begin to look at the trumpets. So looking at the trumpets, Revelation chapter 8, verse 2, and I saw the 7 messengers who stood or stand before Elohim, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And so right away, what you can see is the 7 trumpets coming forth. And as these 7 trumpets are being presented before the world, given by Yahweh, unless we break it down, we don't understand what we are in. The news media would have you think that it is just disaster. It's just natural destruction, natural occurrences. But if we read this correctly, then we will understand that it is not just something happening. Even to the volume of which it's happening and the frequency, all have been sped up. Quick example, if you go back to the 1800s, you would see earthquakes, and I've studied this out before I even say it. I've studied this out. If you go back to the 1800s when they had records, you would see very few earthquakes, tornadoes, things of that such, of that nature. And then as we got closer and closer to the 20th century, 1900s that is, you can see the increase as well as the increase of mankind. Mankind have actually exploded onto the earth. Those of us who are alive today, we don't recognize it because we are used to the child rate, birth rate. This is what we're used to. But it wasn't always this way. It would take a great deal of time for children to be born, which is what was so phenomenal about Yaakov when he had 12 sons. And 11 of them or 10 of them came to Mizraim. They were like, one man and 12 sons? No, this can't be. Because it wasn't the norm. Now, with the house of Yahweh, he would. But just people in general. And again, I confirm this, I checked this out with statistics, looking at the time and how they were able to say man has begun to really, the numbers over the past 100 years, a little more than 100 years, have went up so significantly. So much so that they celebrated the 7 billion person coming into the earth just a few years ago. And we were about 1 billion going back to, I think it was the early 1800s. 1 billion people they had in the earth. 100 years later, we've increased over 6 billion. That's a lot. So as we go through Revelation chapter 1, Revelation chapter 8 verse 1, and when he opened the 7th seal, there came to be silence in the heavens for about half an hour. That in itself is a seal that is being opened. And the awesomeness about this, we know who it is. This is Yeshua, who is opening the seals. The seals are something that took place in heaven. Yahweh is sitting with a little scroll in his hand, but that little scroll had 7 seals. Now, if we think about a seal is something of authority. And if it is of authority, it is the king. Rabbi, too, can I get this to move out a little bit? So I can push this forward. A seal is put on by a king. Who is permitted? Midrash would be right here. Who is permitted to open a seal? Just shout it out. Who is permitted to open a seal? A seal is the sign of authority. So the king gives his seal when he locks in something. He sends it by a messenger to the one that is intended. Who is that person that it is intended? The one that has authority to open it? So would you say Yeshua have authority to open it? Not even the messenger have authority to open that seal. So you see where I'm going. I see it in your eyes. So when the messenger takes this message, he then takes it wherever he has to go. And in most cases, his life depends on it. That he gets it in the hand of the one who has authority to open the seal. So right here, we see Yeshua is the one who has authority to open the seal. And so as Yeshua is the one who has the authority, we see the messengers who speaks to Yochanan, and he says, wait a minute, here comes the Lamb. And so now, like I said, I'm going to kind of be brief with the seals, just kind of throwing in enough. That was the book in. You saw the open, and we'll see the close as well. Well, actually, to be opened. And there's some more process that I won't really go into a whole lot. But let's look and see inside the seals. This is what was in the seals. And there's messengers who are part of the seal. And what we will find out that it's not just one leaflet. It's a book. So there's pages concerning this message. And so they're sealed, but the one who had authority now is giving us a view. And so if you recognize this from time past, Revelation, the 7 bowls of wrath. This is chapter 15 and 16, the last part of 15, and then going into chapter 16. Once again, you'll read of the same thing in chapter 7, chapter 9, from 8 on through, you will read all about this. So here's a condensed form. And so the first bowl that was poured out, sores upon men. The second bowl, those who have the mark, if you can see it. And then the second bowl that is poured out on men is sea turned to blood, and those who drink of it will die. Right away, this should take you back to Mizraim and the plagues that were placed on the earth, or excuse me, placed on Mizraim. And the difference is now it's being the earth. And then there were also rivers and all waters became blood. So we can recognize this right away from the plagues, the 10 plagues. And so that was the third, that's the third trumpet. The fourth trumpet, the sun becomes hot. It scorches the earth. Notice it's in two parts. There's a part where the sun is turned dark, and it appears to have sackcloth and ashes. In other words, solar eclipse. That's what it is. But it's not finished yet. It has more to go through, and again, fire upon the earth. And then the fifth trumpet, darkness upon the earth. Once again, that's a reaction from the sun. The sun is being blotted out. It becomes dark. And then there's a second part to that as well. The day of clouds. Day of clouds. When the true light is being blotted out. We have not had real sunlight, sun days or sunny days in a good while. So when we see a sunny day, we really recognize that it's a sunny day. It's like, wow, the sun is out. Look at this. Not a cloud in the sky. This wasn't the norm. Sunny days were the norm. There's been a flip-flop, and they don't recognize it. And so the fifth bowl, or the fifth bowl of wrath, is darkness, a kingdom that comes to earth. First of all, it's a dark kingdom. It's evil. It is not for good. It's the kingdom of Hasatan, or the beast and the kingdom. And then the sixth bowl, which is Euphrates and the kings of the east. And this is phenomenal here, because what we are seeing, I'll tell you where we are. This is where we are today. The fifth bowl. And the fifth bowl, as we go further into it, we'll understand that there's a top part and a bottom part. This is actually the first part, but I've taught on this before as well. So here really is your trumpets. Here is your bowls. And so let me just run through it really quickly. Euphrates is dried up so that the kings of war, or the kings from the east, will come and take Jerusalem, and the scripture says for 42 months, Revelations, or 3.5 years. And then right here, before we get there to the seventh trumpet or seventh bowl, three demon spirits like frogs gather for battle of Yahweh Almighty. And what that is the battle of Armageddon, as is taught, Hamagedon in the Hebrew. And so the seventh trumpet is poured, or excuse me, bowl, I'm trying to keep it straight. Seventh bowl is poured out on the air. And that seventh bowl also represents the position of time that Yeshua himself is the seventh trumpet. As you can see here, the mystery of Yahweh finished, up there, done. So what is being poured out on the earth as we are opening up with our trumpets? Once again, here is the judgment of thirds. It took me a while to understand this. It took me a few years, actually, of reading it and reading it and reading it and going back and reading it. And as the time progressed, I began to get a little more understanding. As I see things are happening, I then have a greater understanding of what is happening. And so sometimes for me, it takes the event itself to reveal itself. And then there's other times I'll say that Yahweh, he reveals them to me in dreams and in visions. And so as we are looking at this, now I'll speak of the trumpets so that you can see that the trumpets are warnings of wrath. So what would actually come first is the trumpets, because they tell you, it speaks to two parts of the kingdom. It speaks to both the foolish and the wise. And how so? It warns one and the other gets the wrath. It warns you that it's coming. But those who don't heed to the warning get the wrath. But in true essence of what is taking place, we're all being judged by these. But it's the seals that protect you from what is taking place. So remember with Joseph, there was 7 years of good and 7 years of famine, bad, right? And so 7 and 7, but you don't add them together. They overlap each other. They both happen. One starts it. Then you see some of the things happening and shadows of them until they come in full force. And so this is how I interpret it. That as we hear the trumpets blowing, we begin to see the events. And sometimes it's the shadow that tells us that the essence is following. Now, when is the question? So the first trumpet is burning of trees, grass. The second trumpet is mountains set on fire. The third trumpet is called the wormwood, and it is the bitterness of waters, turning the water in. And you may recognize this from Moshe when he threw the gold and the tree, and the different times that we can read about the waters being turned bitter. The waters of Meribah, also the time when they, the laws of jealousy, took on another god. And let me just kind of, I have to postpone because it's keep telling me I'm going to shut off. Okay. All right. Very good. I think I got it. All right. So as we move through this, the fourth trumpet is darkness. Once again, the day of clouds. There will be also signs in the sun and the stars, locusts and demons, trumpet number 5, trumpet number 6. Once again is the announcement of the messengers who are going to be released to bring the wrath of Yahweh on men. Again, the seals, the messengers, they have been given permission to bring forth destruction. But this wasn't, all of this was sealed up. It would happen, but we wouldn't know. So this is why, this is one reason I'll say that Yeshua said, we don't know the time nor the seasons. Because we didn't know, most of this we didn't know. Now, Daniel can give us part of it, and Ezekiel can give us part, and Zechariah can give us part. But remember, the spirit of Yeshua is what? Prophecy. The spirit, the witness of Yeshua is the spirit of prophecy. And so it took Yeshua to come, die, go into heaven, open the seals. Now we have a greater understanding than any other generation. And so as we move into the seventh trumpet, once again, the mystery of Yahweh is now being revealed. Why? Because it's being fulfilled in the earth. And is this meant to kill us off? No. It is meant to warn us, number one, and to save us. To warn us and to save us. And so as we continue, let's look at Revelation chapter 8, verse 7. The first messenger sounded hail and fire mixed with blood. A third of the trees were burned up, and all the grass and all green grass was burned up. Now, does this mean all of the earth? No. Because remember, the seal was a third of the earth. And even 1 foot, after 1 foot, after 10 more feet, after another 100 feet, all of these count up. Yahweh knows the complete measurement of the earth. And so does that mean it have to burn all at one time? 1/3 of the earth is burning at one time? No. It is meant for us to see it happening and recognize what is happening. Even if one fire take place on one corner of the earth or 1 foot of the land, and then another time, another fire, another foot. Yahweh is that smart that he keeps track of what has been burned. Now, once it's burned, it's done. That don't don't mean that it has to burn forever so that we can just finally recognize that Yahweh's wrath is now upon us. But it is happening. And this is what the seal is come to reveal. And so let's take a look at some European areas where I think this will satisfy part of the earth burning, because this is more than a foot. If you recognize that this blaze is pretty widespread, and there's trees in that, which give you a very good indication that the earth is under the wrath of Yahweh. Now, that's one place. Is that it? Is it finished? No. The time is moving, and as time moves and progress, we also see the other trumpets take place. Extreme weather. Once again, we have seen this before. In the first, let's see if this will work. Nope, just wanted to try it again. Flood. We see the flood is happening, and what we see is house tops. These are the tops of houses. Still happening to this day. Although this is a few years ago, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. This is maybe 3-4 years back. And possibly going back to 2011. This is where I started collecting images and pictures. I saved them because these are things that I'm always talking about. And so we see on the next screen, we see the earth has been dried up. The sun did that. The earth is scorched. And so this one, I'm not sure. I know I did save Euphrates. I'm not sure if this one is Euphrates, but this would be how Euphrates is beginning to look. I've shown that in the past, but this is too how the river of Euphrates is looking, and it is much worse today, because that was a few years back when I showed that one. So also what we see here is a river. This is a river that feeds another, or late feeding a river, whichever one is correct. But we see it has frozen. And the image is giving us two parts. Here is a river that is still liquefied, where it has solidified up top. So we're going from one extreme to the next. From heat to frozen to famine. And so I'll mention right here that what we're actually seeing are the 4 horsemen. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the 4 horsemen, but what we have is, with the 4 horsemen, we have war, famine, disease, and death. Those are the 4 horsemen. And I think that we all can verify that all 4 are operating in the earth. And so these messengers are the ones that are coming out to the earth and bringing forth the messages that has now been released. And so now we see and have evidence, and we can see what Yahweh has ordered. And again, the seals. We are seeing the seals opened. So I'm giving you details now. So much so that even a closer look, extreme weather, I would say. A car parked, it wasn't like that when they parked it. There was times where people themselves didn't have time to get out of cars. If you remember, even in Charlotte, they were stuck just trying to get home because of the snow. And so we can see where being close to the ocean or the water here jumping over the retaining wall, and the cars are just freezing that are parked there. There's one that's behind it, not as bad as this one. There's a second car there, but it's not as bad. But again, I collect these so that we can see with our own eyes what is happening in the earth. So let's go a little bit more in depth to Yahweh's word. So we've seen some images. And we're going to read from Hosea chapter 4, verse 3, and look at some of the things also. 1/3 of the animals, 1/3 of the vegetation, 1/3 of man. All of these things are taking place. But Yahweh's grace is sufficient, because what he is truly doing, he is letting us see it before it comes on man. So in that order, we're seeing the earth go through a transition. Then we're seeing the fifth day creation, animals, as well as the sixth day creation. And then last, he's man, because we were created last in that order. And so, Hosea chapter 4, verse 3, therefore the land mourns, and everyone living there languishes or undergo hardship, with the beasts of the field and the birds of heavens, and the fish and the sea are taken away. Now, if you think about left behind, they got the wrong concept. Because they're talking about the good ones being taken and everybody else being left behind. Remember in all those series how the good people would always, their clothes would be left, and the others, they are taken on into heaven, and everybody running around trying to figure out what's going on. They don't have the right concept. Let's look at it again. I don't want you to just take it from me. All right, it says, everyone living there languishes. Therefore, let me start it again. Therefore the land mourns. So what's the first thing to mourn? The land. All right, so we got that. Everyone living there languishes or undergo hardship. I wanted to just make sure that we understand what that term means. Undergo hardship. And I think we're there as well, because any person that is going through these, some may suffer more than others, because some are sealed. And the thing that I don't want us to be sealed and think that we've made it, because there's something that's coming too. I'll get there in a few minutes. But anyway, let's continue. With the beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens and the fish of the sea are taken away. So if the beasts of the field, the birds of heaven, fish of the sea are being taken away, they're being taken away by death. This is not a left behind concept. This is a Yahweh concept. By those who are being taken away are dying. This is the wrath of Elohim. You recognize it next time you see. Anytime you see the Left Behind series, remember Hosea. So let's take a closer look at what is being taken away. This is actual news that I've collected over the years as well. And so much so that I went back to January 6th of 2011. And this goes through 2015 of December last year. Now we're into a new year. I will tell you that it is continuation already. It is continuing. It has not stopped. I just haven't gone into this year's. I think this is sufficient just to give us a picture. But I've been looking at the counts for this year as well. So, but I think this would be sufficient. All right, so the summary for 2012 is 465 known mass death events in 67 countries. Then for 2013, 798 known mass deaths. These are species in 93 different countries. 2014, 304 known mass deaths in 58 countries. 2015, 105 known mass death events in 34 countries. And I think that's enough to give us an indication that this has to be the 1/3, the wrath of Elohim. As I've already said, it is not over. It's still continuing. You can go out and look for 2016 and begin to see some of the different deaths that have occurred already, and we're into, and I'm using man's calendar, the 4th month, the Roman Greco calendar. We're into the 4th month, and there's a lot of death that has already happened. And so that was the first trumpet. So I think we have given sufficient evidence to show that the first trumpet have taken place, which is extreme weather. And from that extreme weather, we're seeing die-offs take place. So let's look at the second trumpet. It says, what looked like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. 1/3 of the sea became blood. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died. 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. Now, the question can be, okay, we can see the sea that happened or is happening. We can see the creatures are dying. Let me explain 1/3 of the sea. 1/3 of the sea doesn't necessarily mean that 1/3 of the big sea turns to blood. That might not be necessary. But if there's death that takes place, what happens? The blood. If the blood is contaminated, taken, whatever, that is also considered, we can consider that as death. Because blood, in the absence of blood, and I'm not saying that they lost their blood, but something happened. Something took place that all of these fish are dying and washing up on shore. They have no excuse or explanation. They've been trying. But the reason I wanted to show you a summary so that you can see that these are happening across the world, nations, countries. This same thing is happening. So we can't be fooled by their rhetoric saying, oh, certain things happened and it scared the birds, or certain things happened and people put stuff in the waters and the companies, you know, and it contaminated the fish and they died. Trumpets. I will stand on that. So, well, what happened to 1/3 of the ships then? How do we explain that? Well, who was last? Man. You're not going to find no fish operating ships. They just don't do that. They swim. So you're not going to see creatures, you know, only on the cartoons, but you're not going to see creatures operating ships. So Yahweh is dealing with the animal kingdom. He's dealing with vegetation first. And so there's coming a time where those who will be on the water and air. See, we have ships in the air and we have ships in the water. They both carry people, transportation. It's going to happen. If the others happen, I believe that will happen as well. So, a mountain that was cast into the sea, volcano. We can take that two ways. Sea, water, but in the water we have to also remember that people, groupings of people. But here's land. This is light. These are businesses, homes, everything. And this mountain is exploding. And I would not want to be in the foothills of that mountain. And so you can see very plainly that Yahweh's trumpet is at least right there, if no other place taking place. But I'll also tell you that there is a ring of fire that connects all 7 continents. And in the last few days, there have been some very phenomenal fireworks truly happening that's telling us that there's a greater that is coming. And I do mean the wrath. But looking at this map here, let's kind of bring it home a little bit. And this goes back to 2012, you've seen before. Each one of those yellow and red dots are places that are listed as fires. And if you look at, that's a map of the United States. And the majority of the United States have been on fire at one time or another. But this is all 2012. Now remember, I'm going pretty much from, let me say where my starting point, even though I did show January, but my starting point and focus is Sukkot of 2011. This is when I started seeing things really pull into place and take shape. And so that's not far from 2012. So in other words, there was a great awareness that is taking place that this land is burning. Because you would get reports that California is just really suffering. And then on another side, where we would be under, underwater, floods. So with that scene, that visual, we can pretty much say, and this is not the only place. This is around the world. But because we're here in the United States and they have statistics here, I was able to bring forward something that we could see, and these are my records. So here's another. The third messenger sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. It fell on a third of the rivers and on the fountains of the water, and the name of the star is called Wormwood. And a third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the waters because they were made bitter. Now, why does Yahweh do this? Why does he do that? Remember, this is part of the testing. Remember Moshe and Israel, he said to this laws of jealousy, the priest would take, if the wife had been accused of adultery, he would take the words of that wife and wipe them off into water, and she is to drink it, and when she drinks it, if she is innocent, she's vindicated, she would become pregnant, and her husband can be now satisfied because the law of jealousy have taken him, and he has no way to prove it. So Yahweh, through the Torah, gave a way to prove. And this is the priesthood. So we have Moshe, who's now operating in the area of priest. And he did this with all of Israel. And those who was worshiping the god, the golden calf, this was milled down or ground down, thrown into the water, and they had to drink it. And as they drank that water, it was bitter to them, and as time progressed, their bellies would swell and their thighs would rot. So here was a false pregnancy. And everyone who was guilty, that would happen to them. Everyone, and Moshe told him, Yahweh told Moshe, do not allow your eyes to fool you, your heart to fool you. If it is your brother, if it is your relative, you must slay them. This is when the Levites came out. This is where the Levites were separated from all of the other tribes. And so, here's an image to see wormwood. We can go back to 2013, February 15th. There was a meteor that was pretty sizable that struck over Russia. They haven't found the whole of it yet, the whole part of it, that is. They found some fragments, but they have not found the mass of it. Did it go into the water? There's no other evidence that says here is where it landed. But they know where they saw it. And it destroyed windows, cars, and things. And I think still even today, you can go out on the internet, pull this up with the date, and hear and see what some people were able to witness via internet or their cell phones or dot cameras in their cars over in Russia. They say about 1,500 people died during this time. 1,500. It didn't hit anyone. But from the mere passing of it, destroyed windows and car windows and doors imploded and parts of buildings. And so I say either that's the shadow or that was it. But this I do know there will be more. So I do believe that it's a shadow of greater to come. Here's the fourth messenger. A third of the sun, the moon, the stars were struck and were darkened. And a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in the mid-heaven, crying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to those dwelling upon the earth." Revelation chapter 8, verses 12 through 13. And so, we've seen the sun, the moon, and we're seeing things take place in the stars. But what we already also are seeing, if you look out the window, this is a good piece of evidence how the sun is being blocked out. It's very cloudy today. And the sun is not giving all of its light. Now, how do we break that down? They said a third of the sun. So, Yeshua helped us out with that. Excuse me. He said, are there not 12 hours in a day? So he's giving us something to understand. So what is a third of 12? My mathematicians. Yes. Go ahead and say it.
4 hours.
4 hours. Everybody got it right. They held up what said. 4 hours. Let's prove it. 4 plus 4 equals what? 8 plus 4 equals 12. A third of the day. And so this is what we're seeing. A third of the day is being blotted out because we are in the day of the clouds. The day of the clouds is when the clouds do not permit the full sun ray to hit the earth. Yahweh is still merciful in that because he allows us to still live with what we get. Flowers and trees are still living. But he only meant for 1/3. If you think about it, if you block out the sun, period, for an amount of time, everything is going to have to die eventually. So what he merely wants us to do is see and recognize the raft. And so that's trumpet number 4. And so as we continue, trumpet number 4, what follows trumpet number 4 is something that we really have to understand and pay great detail to. Because trumpet number 4 has a period of time. And the period of time for a trumpet, I'm saying trumpet number 4, trumpet number 5. Trumpet number 5 have a period of time which is 7 years. Now, how do we know that? The scriptures tell us. If you study the scripture as I have, Jeremiah, he gives us that. Isn't he the same one who told Daniel or wrote and Daniel understood? 70 years. We're supposed to be going home. And they went home. So with that said, this comes in 2 parts. The first part is 3.5 years. That first woe, 3.5 year period. But then we have to break that down too, and we'll continue with it in just a moment. But now, the time of Jacob's distress is also known as Jacob's troubles, Jacob's troubles. And that first 3.5 year period is called also tribulation. Traditional church also understand that part, that there will be a time of tribulation. Now, they don't understand it in its entirety. They don't understand the parts of it, but they know that just something is going to happen, and it is called the time of Jacob's trouble. But then that is also a 2-part, like I said, 3.5, 3.5. So the second part is called Great Tribulation. So Yahweh divided it into 2 parts, tribulation and then Great Tribulation. So once again, I will tell you where we are in this. We have now passed, and when I say this, you realize why they were saying today. And even if they didn't understand what they were saying, the significance of coming through the first part of the new year. And now we're on to the next part, coming up to Shavuot. The holy days is what talks to us. It's the seals. It gives us understanding. So because it's the seals that Yeshua opened, and they're being manifest, we're understanding them. So does that tell us how we are being sealed and how we are sealed? Well, how can that be? Remember Yeshua, he showed up, the Lamb showed up, and he was opening the 7 seals. Now you're making the connection, right? All right, so let me finish this part here. So the first part, which is the tribulation, 3.5 years. Then the second part, which is the Great Tribulation, which is also 3.5 years. The focus is on the fall feast this time. Whereas the focus was on Passover, which is now manifested. Yahweh has, Yeshua, when he came, he died, and everything through, from the first feast through the 4th feast have been satisfied, because he died, he rose, and the 50 days, and then he came back, right? The Holy Spirit was given. In other words, the breath of life. So the fall feast, we have the Holy Spirit. I've seen a few people kind of nod their head. I'm not sure if everybody understood that. Do we understand that the Holy Spirit has now come? So that right there is the manifestation of the first 4 feasts. And what we have now crossed over into, from Passover to the giving of the Holy Spirit, right? Now what we are focusing on, or what Yeshua, Yahweh is focusing on, is manifesting the fall feast, which starts with what? Yom Torah, Yom Kippur, and the bride. And so Yom Torah is what? Trumpets, Feast of Trumpets. It's the announcement. And so with the announcement, we know that we must now do what? Cleanse ourselves. And as we cleanse ourselves, we're getting ready to go away for the wedding feast. And that brings in the day of Yahweh. And the day of Yahweh is when he does battle and takes his bride. Takes his bride away. Because right now I need you to be safe and sealed. But when did they be sealed? When did they become sealed? Long before we got here. Before you and I got here. I'll show you in a few minutes. So let's travel on a little bit further. Now let's go to Matthew chapter 24, verses 29 through 31. And immediately after the distress of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall. Stars shall fall, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then the sign of the son of Adam happened. Adam shall appear in the heavens. And then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, and they shall see the son of Adam coming on the clouds of the heavens with power and much esteem. And he shall send his messengers with the sound, with a great sound of a trumpet, and shall gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So first thing I want to just look at, where is Israel? In the four corners of the earth. I mean, what else would he send someone or a messenger with the trumpet to blow the sound? And they gather. So where are we? In the nations of the earth. So if we can see that that's true, then I think the others are true. Have we seen the sign of Yeshua come yet? Have everyone seen his sign? That's debatable. That's debatable. Because the scripture says everyone will see. So if everyone haven't seen and seen his sign, then it must not have manifested yet. So that must mean that it's still prophecy to happen. So if that's prophecy to happen, what happens after that is the gathering. And it's not completely after. But this is the reason he comes, is to gather his elect. So when we see that take place, guess what else will be taking place? We'll be gathering. And so if we haven't seen his sign in the sky yet, the earth becomes black, dark, everything is dark, and we see a focus. I mean, you know, when a play takes place, the lights go out right in the audience, and then the light come on the focus person in the individual, right? So everyone can see. Wow, can you imagine that? Yeshua's coming. Lights go dim in the earth. And then all of a sudden we see in the sky, light. Let there be light. And then no one would be able to deny that he is here. But when we see him on the sign, let's go back and answer that question. And then, second bullet, and then the sign of the son of Adam shall appear. So we shall see a sign. People are looking for him to come. Yes. But what we will see is the sign. He'll be busy with his people. We'll see him. Oh, yeah. But now let me go back to that first bullet once again. When can we kind of understand when? Because truly we're homesick and we're ready to go. So I want you to see the sign. I want you to understand when. because no man know the day nor the hour. So I'm telling you when. Even if you really don't understand, but when you see the sign, you'll know when. Because now we're waiting. Our songwriters are writing songs about when. Yes. When will we return to our home? Because we're not in our home now. So something is happening. There's a stirring in the earth that is telling us when is coming. When is coming. When you see the sign, he's coming. And when we see his sign, it becomes then. And so here we are. What are the signs? What are the signs that we shall see? Here's when. And I'm only glad to repeat this once again. We've seen this. This has happened. Let's look at the dates. Passover, April 15th, 2014. Blood moons, I'm speaking of, Tetrad. Sukkot, October 8th, 2014. And then something took place right after we seen those signs. Now, I can speak for those of us here. We've been watching this. We've been speaking about this over the past few years. And when 2014 came in, we were able to watch and look and see if we could see it now. The first year, we wasn't able to see it in this country, but we were able to verify that in other places, it did happen. Matter of fact, there was one island that I watched, and it was like 3 hours worth of seeing this, and the island is called Faroe. It's a European country, but it's an island that had a real good view of the 2014, and I watched it. The earth, I'm telling you, this was magnificent. It was during the daylight. And as I'm speaking, I'm revisiting, I'm seeing it. It was broad daylight. It's like, I can't remember the time, but it's like 12 o'clock during the day, 1 o'clock, and it became pitch black. This island, it was dark, and they still were rolling. And so cars were going past, and they had their headlights on. Now I remember the timeline. It was around 3 o'clock because they were saying that some people are getting off work 3 and 4 o'clock, and I was able to see people in their headlights driving past. But the people who were operating, who were standing right there, you couldn't see them because it was pitch black. And so it happened. And so right in the middle of distress, and then great distress, we have Adar 29 or Nisan 1, which is the beginning of the new year, which was March 20th, I'm going way back. March 20th, 2015, last year, where we have just now come across into Adar 1, and now Passover, and now heading toward Shavuot. And then, starting the next year, 2015, Passover, 2 weeks later, April 4th, 2015, another blood moon, followed by September 28th, and we were at Sukkot when we were able to view this one. 2015, last September. And I think we had a reminder. I received a call from Minister George after Shabbat on last week. And he was excited. And he was like, Rabbi, where are you right now? I'm at home. He said, outside, you got to see this. The moon coming off the highway, looking at the moon, it is red. It's a blood moon. it was so big, it looked like we were almost to drive into it. I mean, the brother was excited seeing this, and I appreciate him calling me because he alerted me, and me and Roberts got out and got in the car, and we went driving until we could see it. Because the trees, it was too low because it was coming up. It was about to rise. And he caught it right there at moonrise. And as he saw it, he's like, this thing is big. You got to see this. I'm going to go back out and see if we can take some pictures. Him and Adriana went out and they was trying to take pictures and trying to make sure that, you know, we knew that there was another blood moon. And then the next night was another blood moon. So both after Shabbat on last week and then right the holy days and then Sunday night another blood moon, and both of them was unexpected. Science didn't know that that was supposed to happen. Now I had read, because I keep up with what's going on in the earth. I had read a day before that it was supposed to happen, but I thought it happened in another country and we didn't see it. So I was glad to get that call when you told me, it was here, it's here, I see it. So we had some witnesses, as well as Reverend and myself. We kind of caught it on the tail end while it was growing more and more to the white moon. But we saw it at the, you know, transition. Because it only lasts for a few minutes, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or so at the reddish state. But anyway, continuing on, let's look at the fifth messenger. And I saw a star from the heavens, which had fallen to the earth, and the key to the pit of the deep was given to it. And he opened the pit of the deep, and the sun was darkened. Also the air became, because of the smoke of the pit. And it was given to them that they should not kill them, but to torture them for 5 months. The first woe is past. See, 2 woes are still coming after this. So if we now have proven that there is evidence of all 4 trumpets that have taken place, and now we also see in Russia there was a star that came into the earth. Now since that time there's been more. We've gotten hit here in the U.S. and see, they're keeping these things down low, but you know, people talk. So you can scrounge up some information. I did. You know, you can find stuff on some of the newscasts. But the big news, you know, they're not talking about it too much. At least those who think that they're Israel believe, you know, that it's almost time. So their job is to hide it and not be, you know, truthful with what is going, you know, what is going on. But anyway, and I said before, I'll say again, this is where I believe that we are. Can I be wrong? Sure. But this is my interpretation based on all the information that I have presented to you and what I have not. I have plenty of information. Trust me when I say that. I've been saving stuff in my computer for quite some time over the years. And so, how long is the first woe? How long is the first woe? 5 months. That's not a long time, and that's not a metaphor. That's real time. So what I told you before is, I believe from Sukkot to Passover is our 5-month period. Now, although if you start counting, for those of you who are, you know, just smart like that, you'll find 6 months this year. But normally, from, I'll go ahead and count it out. From October to November, right? November, that's 1 month. November, December, January, February, March, April. So we're into a 6-month period, because now we have to also account for the leap year. But normally it's 5 months. So what would Yahweh say? 5 months, because he know we would connect what? From Sukkot to Passover is 5-month period. Normally. It's just like saying 12 tribes. When you count the tribes, you know you got more than 12. But there's a theme that he is going for here, and he hides what he chooses to hide, only for those who understand to understand. So here, once again, this is why I said the 5th trumpet is where we are. And so I can safely say now what I'm going to say, that I believe that the first woe is over. Based on this, but to torture them for 5 months, the first woe is past. I believe that 2 more are still to come after this. And so how do I look at this? Haven't death been taking place? But see, we have to remember the 4 horsemen are still out there. The 4 horsemen. What do the 4 horsemen bring? War, famine, disease, and death. So we still see death, but it's not by the messengers or who are being released. But they're getting ready to get busy now. It wasn't for them to do. This was for the 4 horsemen who have been riding. We can take that back to Yeshua. I have plenty of information to verify that the 4 horsemen, remember after Yeshua died, 70 AD, that 2/3 of Israel was killed off. Only 1/3 survived. Where did they go? Into Africa. And from there, where did it go? Into the nations. Well, how did they do that? As slaves. So, if you're seeing how all of this is working, Yahweh, he has given us understanding so that if we dig, we can figure this out. We can understand it. This is why Yeshua had to open the 7 seals. Now, I know I only showed you the 7th one. That means he opened all the other ones in succession. 1, 2, all the way up to 7. So what he is revealing, and I'm telling you, it was just too big. I really was going to do it. I was going to try to put all the 7 seals, but this would have been huge. I mean, bigger than it is. This is already huge. So I gave you what I think that can be a summary. And Yeshua opened the 7th seal, meaning that he revealed what was sealed. And again, I'll show you some more of what's been sealed. I'm just going through some details of what no man knew, the day nor the hour. So he had to reveal it. And what is the witness of Yeshua? The spirit of prophecy. What am I speaking of today? The spirit of prophecy. The trumpets. And so, the 6th trumpet, as you can see, I'm nearly finished. I only have 1 more behind this. 1 more trumpet. And the 6th messenger sounded. Revelation chapter 9, verse 14 through 16. Saying to the 6th messenger who had the trumpet, release the 4 messengers, those having been bound at the great river Euphrates. And the 4 messengers, those having been prepared for the hour, the day, and the month, and the year, were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. And the number of the armies of the horsemen was 200 million. Revelation chapter 16, verse 12. And the 6th messenger poured out his bowl on the river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, in order to prepare the way of the sovereigns of the east. Now, let's make sense of this. Let's look at one of the sovereigns of the East, or kings, or rulers. The president of Russia. Remember they came, we were at Sukkot, right? That's big by itself. The 30th, they began to bomb Syria, right? And remember all that's taking place with Damascus. This is one of the signs, right? So here is the president. Now I'm having a hard time. I was trying to remember what's his name. Somebody shouted out. Putin. Yes, Putin. President Putin of Russia. He came and he took part in major destruction. And remember when we was at Sukkot, I wasn't sure until I saw that Putin had come and started bombing. We were at Sukkot. And during Sukkot, it was raining. Remember five days, was it? 5 days in a row, and it just rained the whole time almost that we were at Sukkot. And South Carolina was flooding, and all of the different places were flooding. Raft. Boom. So another thing I saw on the 28th started happening, because I was trying to keep up with the news as things were happening, that people started slashing in Jerusalem. And remember the scripture says, do not count the outer court, right? To the messengers, do not count the outer court. Why? Because it has been given to the Gentiles for time, times, and half time. 1,260 days. But when you get to 1,260th day, stay there till 1,335th day. So something is taking place while those who are sealed and outside, nothing can happen. Now, I have to clarify that. You can still get the wrath of God, the wrath of Yahweh, as payment for sin. What we're looking at is life and eternal life. You can have eternal life and lose life, in other words. Your consequences or your sin can cause consequences that cause for payment due, death. But we also know that Yeshua, because of his death, he took away the sting, right? And Romans 8:2 says that he took away the law of sin and death. So we're no longer stoned. But that didn't stop us from sinning.
As we enter in your courts, with our voice singing blessings and glory. In our hearts we draw nigh.